Even though the Super Bowl wrapped up just about a week ago, the NFL offseason is fully upon us, with many teams well into their plans to develop into the future, with probably the most notable in this group being the Miami Dolphins, who recently released Tyreek Hill, their all-pro wide receiver, as well as their linebacker in Bradley Chubb, both players who could be interesting additions for San Francisco's defense and offense headed forward. So in this video, I did want to dive a little bit more deeply into each one of these players, how much they would cost, how they've performed recently, and their fit in San Francisco to see if San Francisco should pursue either one of these moves. And immediately started out with Tyreek Hill. He is coming off a pretty brutal knee injury, but when you look at him as a player, overall, he's been one of the most dynamic wide receivers across the National Football League. And with San Francisco slated to lose both Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings to free agency, and George Kittle probably not being ready week 1, this could make a lot of sense for this team. That's especially given the fact that Tyreek Hill had probably his best season under Kyle Shanahan's disciple Mike McDaniel in 2023, where he was able to register 1,799 yards and 13 touchdowns through the air. And even last year, prior to his injury, he was still pretty solid. In just 4 games, for instance, he had 265 yards, 12.6 yards a reception, and a touchdown. But he wasn't worth it for the Dolphins to keep on at his price, which is why they released him and saved over $22 million. And speaking of price for San Francisco, he probably would cost anywhere between $10 million to $15 million due to not only his injury history at this point, but also some of his off-the-field concerns, which is why San Francisco may be interested in this move. It's not going to cost him an arm and a leg. So as far as positives go in a potential Tyreek Hill signing, the 49ers get a relatively cheap elite wide receiver if his recovery does go well, a proven veteran presence in the locker room, proven productivity in Shanahan's system, and a clear fit at a position of need. For years, for instance, Kyle Shanahan has been saying how he wants to add more speed to the offensive side of the ball, and if Tyreek Hill is able to recover, there's no better player to do it than him. With that being said, there are some clear cons in signing Hill, as he's on the wrong side of 30, coming off a brutal injury as a speedster, so that's something that Lynch and Shanahan definitely need to look into, and money could be spent elsewhere this offseason, maybe potentially bringing back Jennings. On top of that, he also has off-the-field concerns. Still, even with these concerns, given Shanahan's need at the position and Hill's fit and his dominance in the league for years, I wouldn't be surprised to see San Francisco at least looking into bringing in Hill for a workout, maybe just checking in to see where he is as far as rehab goes, and then going from there. There's probably only a slim chance everything works out for Hill and the 49ers, but if it does, this would be a solid signing. He needs to be healthy, and San Francisco needs to get a team-friendly deal, but if all that works out, they could have one of the better options across the league on the cheap. Outside of Tyreek Hill, another offensive player the Miami Dolphins recently released was James Daniels, their guard, which may be interesting for San Francisco as they've continued to struggle to re-solidify that position. Across his career, Daniels has already started in 85 games despite just being 28 years of age, but he has dealt with injuries. Last year, for instance, he suffered a torn pec despite being the starter headed into the season, and in 2024, after just 4 games, he tore his Achilles. Still though, San Francisco will probably be interested in Daniels. Not only is he going to be pretty cheap, probably only costing $2 to $4 million annually, but when he is healthy, he's pretty dominant. In 2024, for instance, in those 4 games he did play, he was ranked as the second best guard across the National Football League. On top of that, he's a schematical fit in Shanahan's offense, which is why he was starting for the Dolphins before his injury. When you look at his relative athleticism score, for instance, which takes into account your height, weight, and other measurements across the combine, it came in at 9.24, which is considered elite, which really means he's the perfect offensive lineman to set up screens, pull, or double team his way up to the second level, all things he'll routinely be asked to do in Shanahan's offense. It's also worth noting Daniels has the versatility Shanahan and Chris Forrester want out of an offensive lineman. Not only has he played guard, but he also has some background at the center position. So while there are some notable areas of concern to Daniels' game, I do think both Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch will be interested in him hitting the open market. Not only is he young, coming in at 28, but when he has been healthy, he has shown flashes that he can be an elite guard. So if San Francisco can pick him up on the cheap, $2 to $4 million, I really wouldn't be surprised to see him go out and make this move. And honestly, I think it's one of the more realistic options in this video because he is the cheapest option and has the potential for the most upside based on his value. If San Francisco does hit on him, and if he's able to remain healthy for a full season and offer his 2024 level of production, they can have an elite guard for an entire season for only a couple $1 million. And worst comes to worst, he gets injured again and San Francisco isn't out that much. This is exactly the type of move we've seen Lynch make in the past, and headed forward, I wouldn't be surprised to see Lynch at least be looking into this player. And if the 49ers medical staff do think he can stay healthy for an entire year, this would be a solid pickup in my opinion. San Francisco desperately needs help at their offensive line, and this would be a nice step in that direction. But I'd like to hear your thoughts. Would you like to see San Francisco bring in Daniels, or would you like to see him just straight up avoid him because of his medical history, alongside maybe Tyreek Hill and Chubb as well? Speaking of Chubb, he's another player that San Francisco could be interested in, especially given his background in San Francisco's new 3-4 defense that could be implemented under Raheem Morris. Like both Hill and Daniels, Chubb has some injury concerns as he missed the entire 2024 season due to a torn ACL, but still, when healthy, he was one of the Dolphins' better pass rush options. In both 2023 and 2025, for instance, he led the team in sacks. In 2025, he had 8.5. In 2023, he had 11 and 6 forced fumbles that year as well. So while Chubb wouldn't single-handedly answer all of the questions San Francisco has about its pass rush heading into this year, he would be a nice rotational piece, especially considering the fact that he is 30. But he would be pretty expensive given the fact that he has had a recent ACL. He probably would cost anywhere between $13 to $15 million annually and probably would get a 2-year deal. But ultimately, these are just some of my thoughts on some of the players the Dolphins released today or are going to release, and I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. Do you think San Francisco will likely be looking into players like Daniels and Hill like I do, and eventually potentially looking into Chubb? Or do you think San Francisco won't be interested in any of these players due to their injury history? It would also mean a ton to me if you did enjoy this video. If you could go ahead and like and subscribe, it truly helps out the channel a ton. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.